It came without herald, without thunder, without allegiance to any day of human reckoning. Out there in the grand silence, where stars scatter like grains of salt spilled across a black ocean, something moved against the choreography that had endured for billions of years. Astronomers would name it 3I Atlas, but the sterile designation could not diminish the raw strangeness of what it represented. It was a trespasser, an interstellar shard gliding through the solar system like a shadow cutting across a cathedral floor. No comet's luminous tail betrayed its passing. No planet's gravity chained its motion. It did not belong, and it made no attempt to hide that fact. At first, it was barely a glimmer, an unremarkable point of light almost erased against the starfield. But within hours, calculations unveiled the impossible. This body was not bound to the Sunday. Its path was hyperbolic, a celestial verdict written into the mathematics of exile. It had come from beyond, and it would leave again, never to return. For skywatchers, the moment mixed triumph with unease. Discovery had been inevitable. To witness it firsthand was extraordinary. To confront its silence was something else entirely, an ache of mystery too large for comfort. Interstellar space is vast, too vast for language to fully capture. It stretches like an endless desert, where each star is a campfire burning in the dark, and the void between them is measured not in miles but in millions of years. That a fragment of stone or ice should wander across such wilderness is natural. Creation leaves debris in its wake, shards flung outward by violent collisions, drifting for eons without destination. And yet the details of 3I Atlas disturbed in ways not so easily dismissed. Its speed exceeded the familiar. Its reflection teased instruments with hints of texture no one could fully explain. And the absence of a comet's outgassing veil, no comforting trail of vapor, made it stranger still. It came dressed in silence, withholding the ordinary signatures that scientists lean upon as guideposts. The unease deepened because memories of Oumuamua still lingered, the first interstellar visitor identified only a few years earlier. Oumuamua had unsettled the astronomical community with its improbable cigar-like form, its trajectory nudged by some unseen hand beyond gravity, and its refusal to behave like any known comet or asteroid. Many had hoped that the next visitor would bring clarity, as though the universe owed us explanation. Instead, 3I Atlas seemed determined to deepen the riddle. Its arrival was another whisper in the dark, more contradictions, more enigmas, more reasons to question the foundation of knowledge itself. Fear in science is never the bellow of dragons or the blaze of myth. It arrives as a whisper, anomalies in the data, equations that will not balance, instruments returning the impossible. When the orbit of 3I Atlas was traced backward, projected into the abyss from which it came, the silence of its origin was suffocating. Where had it been born? What forces had carved its scars? Was it a mere shard of rock, or the fragment of something larger, stranger, unimagined? The concern was not about collision, its path would never threaten Earth, but about ignorance. The dread that the universe is not what we thought, that the laws of physics are less secure than we once believed. For millennia, humanity has met the unknown with story. In the age of fire, the unknown was given faces of gods and monsters. In the age of reason, it was framed in equations, hypotheses, streams of data. But the emotional core remained unchanged. Awe entwined with dread, fascination braided with unease. To watch 3I Atlas slip across the sky was to witness that duality embodied. The solar system was no sanctuary, but a crossroads, open to wanderers from unreachable distances, arriving uninvited. Thus begins not only the tale of an object, but of our confrontation with a question we cannot yet answer. What is 3I Atlas? Why does it move as it does? What secrets does it carry from interstellar night? The fear is not in the rock, but in its silence. For silence in science is never empty. It is a riddle waiting to be solved, a reminder that certainty is more fragile than we admit. The story of 3I Atlas did not begin with drama. Like so many cosmic revelations, it began with patience, eyes trained on the heavens, searching for signals too faint to stir the imagination of the untrained. In the spring of 2020, the Atlas survey, the asteroid terrestrial impact last alert system, swept its mechanical gaze across the sky. Its network of telescopes in Hawaii was not built to chase interstellar riddles, but to guard Earth, scanning for asteroids that might threaten civilization. Every night it collected streams of light, tracing the ceaseless traffic of small bodies that orbit the Sunday. Hidden in those digital rivers of data, something unusual appeared. The astronomers working with Atlas were accustomed to routine discovery. Small asteroids emerge regularly, faint comets awaken, and shed their first wisps of vapor under sunlight. But this object resisted categorization. Its orbit refused to fall in line with the gravitational choreography of planets and comets. Instead, it carved a path too wide, a curve too strange, an arc that bent not into an ellipse, but into a hyperbola. That geometry left no room for misinterpretation. The object did not belong here. This was only the third time such a wanderer had been recognized. The first was Oumuamua in 2017. The second, Comet 2I Borisov in 2019, had resembled a normal comet, casting off dust and gas in familiar display. But 3I Atlas came muted, elusive, refusing to behave as it should. Astronomers recalculated, adjusted, argued. Discovery, in the history books, often carries romance. Galileo sketching moons, Herschel noticing a faint disk that became Uranus, Hubble proving the galaxies extend beyond the Milky Way. But modern astronomy writes its sagas in machine logic streams of digital images, long nights of cross-checks, computers humming with data. Yet within that unpoetic machinery, revelations still rise, awe still waits. And when the scientists realized what 3I Atlas was, awe swept through the community like a quiet tide. The solar system, so self-contained in our imaginations, had once again been pierced by a messenger from afar. And what were astronomers doing when they found it? Not seeking the exotic, not dreaming of alien shores, but safeguarding Earth from extinction-level impacts. Atlas had been conceived in answer to that ancient vulnerability, the knowledge that catastrophe could arrive not from plague or war, but from stone falling from the sky. Yet, in its vigil, the system caught something stranger than any local menace. A fragment that may have wandered millions of years between stars slipped into its sightline. The names of the discoverers may blur into the records of history, but their labor echoes. They join the long lineage of watchers, those who turn eyes to the dark not knowing what will emerge. Their triumph is not final clarity, but the courage to hold uncertainty. For with 3I Atlas, recognition yielded not answers but deeper questions. From what star had it been flung? How long had it roamed? What scars of ancient collisions marred its hidden surface? Excitement mingled with unease, for each calculation confirmed the truth. It was unbound, entering the sun's grasp from one direction, departing in another, indifferent to every planetary tug. Unlike a comet, it bore no signature of water. Unlike an asteroid, it shimmered strangely, its reflective qualities refusing easy description. In that refusal to conform, it transcended mere classification. It became not just an object, but a story, an encounter that pressed humanity once more against the boundaries of its understanding. And when word of its existence spread beyond the survey teams and orbital modelers, the wider scientific community paused. True, the precedent had been set Oumuamua, then Borisov, yet each new visitor still struck like a tremor, shaking the settled ground of astronomy. The echo of Oumuamua was immediate, because the scar of that first enigma remained raw. Discovered in October 2017, it had slipped through our solar system like a whisper, disobeying the rules written in every catalogue. At first, astronomers thought they had seen a comet, a shard of frozen material, ready to erupt into radiance as sunlight freed its trapped gases. That was the expectation, the comfortable script. But Oumuamua, did not follow the script. It carried no tail, released no dust, showed no breath of vapor. Instead, it shimmered strangely, its brightness bending in rhythm as it tumbled, as though shaped not into a sphere or chunk, but into something elongated, perhaps a cigar, perhaps a flattened disc, the guesses themselves betraying our uncertainty. And then came the most unsettling revelation. Its trajectory did not merely follow the path gravity dictated. It accelerated, ever so slightly, as if pushed by an invisible hand. Solar radiation pressure was offered as an explanation, yet even that neat theory left details unresolved. And so, whispers grew. Could it be more than a rock? An artifact? A probe? A fractured sail drifting between the stars? The question lingered long after it had gone, haunting scientific meetings, filling papers with conjecture, a spectre of possibility that refused to vanish. That is why, when 3I Atlas appeared, the community leaned closer, anticipation sharpened by memory and hope. Perhaps here, at last, was the chance for clarity. Would this new wanderer confirm the strangeness of Oumuamua, or dismiss it as a singular accident of nature? Was it the cousin who would reveal the family resemblance, or deepen the mystery of lineage? At first glance, 3I Atlas seemed gentler, quieter, less theatrical. Its light did not fluctuate with the same dramatic cadence. Its orbit could be plotted with steadier confidence. But beneath the calm surface, peculiarities began to emerge. Its reflective pattern was uneven, hinting at an intricate, perhaps jagged structure. Its silence, no cometary veil, no steady shedding of ice, echoed the stubborn refusal of Oumuamua to conform. The cosmos seemed to delight in tricks, presenting us with objects familiar in outline but alien in detail. And now there were two. One anomaly can be dismissed. It can be folded into chance, coincidence, a rare fluke of geometry. But repetition is heavier. It begins to form a pattern. If Oumuamua was strange, Borisov was almost normal, and now Atlas offered oddities of its own. Then perhaps interstellar space is not the uniform graveyard once imagined. Perhaps it is a theater of boundless variety, where fragments of shattered worlds wander in shapes and states that mock our categories. This is why scientists speak of paradigm shifts with caution. A single contradiction may be argued away, but a second contradiction calls for a new lexicon. The long-held paradigm that visitors from other stars would mirror the comets and asteroids of our own system was wavering. What if such travelers are consistently unclassifiable, each bearing the fingerprint of alien physics, collisions, and histories from realms far beyond our reach? What if they are not accidents at all, but emissaries of processes still unrecognized? In the shadow of Oumuamua, every new arrival is more than itself. It becomes a mirror, reflecting back the unresolved fears of science. 3I Atlas carried that burden heavily. To some, it was another chapter in the catalogue of interstellar debris, each page more diverse than the last. To others, it was a drumbeat announcing something deeper, that the solar system is porous, that the universe is restless, that the stability we prize is but a fragile illusion. While astronomers debated in cautious tones, journalists reached for bolder metaphors, alien sails, hidden technologies, forgotten machines adrift. Scientists resisted such leaps, but even their restraint could not erase the unease. For repetition of mystery is more unnerving than mystery itself. Oumuamua had left wounds of uncertainty unhealed. Now Atlas reopened them, sharper, heavier, demanding answers science was not ready to provide. When its orbit was measured with precision, the verdict came clear. 3I Atlas was unbound. Its trajectory was hyperbolic, not elliptical. Unlike planets, locked in endless closed loops, or comets tracing long ellipses back after centuries, this visitor carried no intention of return. Its path was exile incarnate, one brief brush with the sun's light before sliding outward again, back into the abyss between stars. For astronomers, the realization brought both exhilaration and dread. Exhilaration, because it confirmed once more that the solar system is not a sealed clockwork but a crossroads, visited by wanderers from elsewhere. Dread, because unbound paths are a reminder of how little control humanity has over what passes through. The sun itself, master of planets, comets, and asteroids, could only bend the course of this outsider, never claim it. Even the sovereign star bowed to momentum gathered in another place, another time. Tracing its path backward, researchers sought its birthplace. Their equations reached outward, projecting across the stellar neighborhood. But the line dissolved quickly, because in interstellar distances, even the smallest error blossoms into vast uncertainty. Was it ejected from a newborn planetary system by violent collision? Was it a fragment of a shattered moon, flung away during the birth pangs of alien worlds? No answer could be confirmed, only imagined. Its home, like its future destination, remained veiled. What made the exile's path most unsettling was its speed. It raced through space faster than anything native to the sun's domain. Comets and asteroids, born within, are sculpted by the system's gravity, obedient to its boundaries. But an interstellar traveler carries ancient momentum, the leftover energy of some catastrophe too distant to witness. It is not merely from another place, it is from another time. To see it is to glimpse the aftermath of an event long extinguished, a messenger bearing scars we can no longer interpret. To imagine its journey is to confront immensity. For 3i Atlas to arrive here, it must have wandered millions, perhaps billions of years across the void. In that time, stars have ignited and burned out. Galaxies have collided. Civilizations, if they exist elsewhere, may have risen and vanished into dust. Yet this fragment endured, indifferent, slipping through epochs until the faint lantern of the sun intercepted its path. Humanity, brief as a spark, happened to be watching at just the right moment. The strangeness lies not only in its form or its silence, but in the reminder it delivers. We like to imagine the solar system as a closed mechanism, clockwork orbits, predictable cycles, a sanctuary from the chaos beyond. But visitors will come again and again, on paths indifferent to our boundaries of inside and outside, safe and unsafe. 3i Atlas is proof written in motion. Cosmic borders do not exist. This realization pressed down like a weight on those who studied it. A closed system can be charted, catalogued, domesticated, but an open system, one breached by outsiders, pierced by the unpredictable, demands humility. The fear was never of collision. Its path spared Earth. The fear was implication. What else drifts unseen between the stars? What might arrive next, unannounced? And what if the next visitor is not a silent pebble, but a titan massive enough to alter the fate of worlds? As 3i Atlas swept deeper into the solar system, astronomers followed it with unblinking vigilance. Every flicker of brightness, every curve of its trajectory, became data points stitched into models. Yet the more data they gathered, the more it reiterated the same unyielding truth. This was no child of the Sunday. It was alien not through technology or intent, but by origin alone. Its very presence was a stark reminder that the universe is not ours, and never was. As its course was refined, a second truth emerged, sharper still: velocity. The numbers describing 3i Atlas were no ordinary speeds. Objects born in the solar system obey ranges fixed by the sun's gravity, their energies limited by the family they belong to. But this traveler carried a momentum that betrayed no local birth. Its velocity, measured against the stars, was too high, a silent declaration that it came from elsewhere. Speed, in cosmic terms, is biography. It speaks of forces long past, collisions endured, gravitational slingshots around vanished suns. For 3i Atlas to reach us with such energy meant that, deep in the unrecorded past, some violent act had hurled it into exile. Perhaps it was torn free when planets collided in a distant system. Perhaps it was slung outward by the crushing pull of a giant star, or ejected as a planetary nursery collapsed into chaos. Whatever the cause, it bore the signature of that violence across uncounted light years, until chance set it on a path that crossed our own. For those who tracked it, the speed was thrilling, but also unnerving. It confirmed beyond doubt that this was Interstellar, an emissary from beyond the sun's reach. But it also forced recognition that something so ancient, so fast, could arrive without notice. If a shard of rock could wander between stars and appear suddenly near Earth, what protections do we truly possess? The threat was not impact but exposure, the revelation of our vulnerability before the unknown. Velocity also carried theoretical dissonance. At such speeds, surface ice should sublimate rapidly, streaming into a visible halo, a tail of gas and dust. Yet, 3I Atlas remained quiet. No vapor rose, no tail unfurled. It seemed hardened, stripped of the signatures that would have made it familiar. The absence of such evidence made its speed more haunting, as if it were less an object and more a cipher, its surface carved into code we had no lexicon to decipher. Inside observatories, discussions slipped toward philosophy. Einstein had long given us relativity, explaining how velocities accumulate, how time bends near the cosmic speed limit. But 3I Atlas forced another kind of reflection, not about equations, but about place. Humanity creeps slowly, confined to a single planet, bound to one fragile biosphere. To measure an object rushing across the galaxy at such relentless pace was to confront scale itself. Against its momentum, Earth seemed provincial, the sun seemed ordinary, human lifespans dwindled to sparks extinguished before the night could even notice. That is why velocity unsettles. It is never merely a number, never just kilometers per second. It is a measure of our stillness against the restlessness of the cosmos. And 3I Atlas did not pause, it did not slow, did not yield to our scrutiny. It hurried onward, indifferent to the questions it ignited. Its pace was a message written without words. The universe does not wait. And so the questions deepened. Was its speed only the echo of natural violence, or did it hint at forces we have yet to comprehend? If Oumuamua had shown acceleration inexplicable by gravity alone, and now Atlas bore its own troubling vigor, perhaps velocity itself was the hidden riddle, not just a measure of motion, but a clue pointing to unknown dynamics, forces that might one day reshape our understanding of how the universe moves. Telescopes continued to trace its flight, turning their attention not just to speed but to light. Here, strangeness sharpened further. Many comets reveal themselves with a halo, a plume, a tail, a shimmering veil lit by the sunday. Heat strikes ice, gases escape, and the body wears a crown of brilliance. But 3I Atlas refused. It remained silent, stark, no plume, no dust, no glittering wake. Instead, its reflection arrived irregular, faint, a patchwork of brightness that unsettled explanation. Its albedo, the fraction of light it returned, was neither the dull charcoal of asteroids nor the bright sheen of pristine comets. It fell into a murky middle ground, as though its surface were fractured, scarred, sheathed in materials unfamiliar. Instruments hinted at patches of varying reflectivity, scars from ancient impacts, uneven skins baked and hardened by journeys through radiation and cold. In the data, it appeared as a paradox, cold, quiet, and yet carrying a peculiar glimmer, a subtle shine in places where no plume should have altered its surface. This was the silent signature of 3I Atlas, an enigma not of spectacle, but of absence. Spectrographs strained to extract its composition, pulling meaning from the faintest photons. But the spectra offered no decisive answers, no spikes of water vapor, no clear fingerprints of common molecules, only partial phrases, incomplete sentences in a language beyond translation. And so its silence deepened, not only visual, but scientific. The absence of expected outgassing raised sharper questions still. Perhaps its ices had long since been scorched away, burned off in countless brushes with alien suns, leaving behind only a desiccated husk. Or perhaps there had never been ice at all. Perhaps it was rocky, metallic, or cloaked in exotic compounds forged under conditions no world of our system had ever known. Some suggested that interstellar radiation, endured over millions of years, might have baked its skin into a strange blackened armor, a shell both lightless and resistant, hiding what lay within. And still others, emboldened by echoes of Oumuamua, let their thoughts drift further. Could the irregular glints seen in its light curve hint at flat surfaces, angular facets, shapes more deliberate than random? Most scientists dismissed such speculation as improbable. Yet the whisper persisted in quiet conference halls, in midnight discussions over coffee and datasheets. For had not the first interstellar visitor inspired the same forbidden question? Now a second appeared, wrapped in silence where activity should have been, and imagination refused to let go. The unease was sharpened by another problem. Without the familiar veil of a comet's plume, estimating its size or mass became nearly impossible. All astronomers had was brightness, the faint, fluctuating photons of reflected light. But even these told contradictory tales. Some readings painted a picture of a small, compact body. Others suggested something broader, flatter, stretched thin. The lack of clarity became its own kind of presence, a shadow that enlarged the mystery rather than reduced it. To gaze at such a traveler even indirectly, through instruments translating faint signals into numbers, was to encounter the possibility that the universe does not always yield secrets, but sometimes withholds them deliberately. Comets blaze, planets circle, stars pulse, all offering patterns that can be read. But 3i Atlas belonged to a different category, one of riddles and reticence, of silences that resist translation. For those who measured it night after night, this was humbling. By scale, the object was tiny, a fragment of stone compared to the giants of the cosmos. Yet, in its refusal to conform, it grew immense. Every anomaly widened the gulf between what was known and what might be. And in that widening gulf, unease took root, not fear of impact, but fear of implication. The pursuit of 3i Atlas became a test of technology as much as imagination. To study such a faint and fleeting guest demanded the sharpest tools humanity possessed. NASA's web of telescopes, built for vigilance and defense, bent their attention to it. The Atlas network, which had first caught its passage, continued to refine its track, broadcasting coordinates to observatories across the globe. Pan stars in Hawaii added its patient gaze, sharpening the orbital arc, each plotted point reaffirming that this was no bound citizen of the sun, but a drifter from the dark between stars. Other instruments joined the effort. The Hubble Space Telescope, aging yet precise, turned its lenses toward the visitor. Adaptive optics from the world's largest ground-based telescopes tried to steady the flickering signal against the trembling of Earth's own atmosphere. Each new dataset added layers to the puzzle rather than peeling them away. Some nights the light curve hinted at rotation, as if it tumbled irregularly. Other nights suggested surfaces mottled with brightness and shadow, resisting every attempt to pin it into a single model. The universe seemed to conspire in obscurity, allowing only glimpses, never the whole. To watch it was to strain the limits of technology. Here was a fragment passing through the inner solar system, yet so small, so faint, that even our finest telescopes could not resolve it into more than a point of light, a whisper against cosmic noise. Unlike planets, unlike the grand comets that reveal themselves in photographs, 3i Atlas remained stubbornly abstract. Only mathematics could give it shape. Careful plotting, statistical inference, probability, dressed as presence. It was as if the universe had drawn a veil across its features, allowing suggestion, but never revelation. NASA's Deep Space Network, usually occupied with the voices of spacecraft whispering across the void, was turned toward the visitor. It listened. Nothing. Silence. But the very act of listening spoke volumes. For if even the faintest chance of anomaly lingered, If there was the remotest possibility of design hidden in its silence, then no precaution could be dismissed. The antennas of SETI followed suit, sweeping across frequencies, hungry for even a fragment of artificial signal. Again, nothing. Silence answered, and silence unsettled. Instruments are built to clarify, to confirm, to measure. Here they returned only ambiguity. Its glimmers contradicted one another. Its spectral signature dissolved into noise. Its behavior remained mute where activity was expected. Photon after photon, gathered over weeks, months, told a story that never cohered. This is the paradox of vigilance. The sharper our gaze, the sharper the outlines of mystery itself. Each new measurement failed to collapse the possibilities into certainty and instead multiplied them. Scientists longed for the ordinary, for a tail of vapor, for a familiar spectral line, for a curve of brightness that matched the models. Instead, the strangeness thickened. The instruments worked flawlessly. It was the universe that withheld cooperation. Among the community, mood split between exhilaration and unease. Exhilaration, because every data point was an extension of human reach, a fragile thread tying us to a traveler from far beyond. Unease, because the sketch that emerged refused resemblance to anything known. The more NASA and its partners poured vigilance into it, the more the object retreated into strangeness, as if its essence were not simply hidden but actively elusive. And so, the work pressed on. Night after night, telescopes strained. Scientists debated, models rose and fell, theories bloomed and withered. The vigilance of science remained steady, but vigilance does not dissolve the suspicion that sometimes the cosmos watches back, offering puzzles instead of truths, silence instead of certainty. 3I Atlas lingered in that role, not an object fully defined, but a paradox incarnate, a body both faint and immense, known not by what it revealed, but by what it withheld. And as the weeks of data stretched into patterns, those patterns whispered not resolution, but new anomalies, each deepening the enigma rather than resolving it. In the streaming rivers of data, 3I Atlas flickered with an odd rhythm, its brightness swelling and fading in ways that hinted at rotation, yet never conformed to the steady beat astronomers knew so well. Ordinary asteroids reveal themselves in predictable light curves. As they spin, reflective sides brighten, darkened regions dim, a cosmic metronome easily charted. But this visitor danced irregularly, as though fractured, tumbling in a chaotic spin, its surfaces glinting at capricious angles. Shape might have explained some of it. Perhaps it was jagged, asymmetrical, carved by ancient collisions, but the inconsistencies suggested something more. Patches of strange reflectivity, surfaces that absorbed and reflected light in unfamiliar patterns, hinted at materials beyond the catalogues of rock and ice. Within the whispers of its light, the object seemed inconsistent, a body refusing to settle into any simple model. Spectra brought no reprieve. The faint photons captured by our instruments spoke in half-formed sentences. A comet would shout its chemistry, water vapor, carbon dioxide, organic molecules glowing in clear spectral lines. An asteroid, too, would reveal silicates or metals, fingerprints etched by sunlight into identifiable patterns. But 3I Atlas murmured indistinctly, its spectrum dissolving into noise, refusing to declare allegiance to any known class. It was neither clearly comet nor confidently asteroid. Its silence in the spectrum became paradoxically loud, echoing through scientific circles. Every attempt to categorize only deepened the mystery. It was as if the object carried its own deliberate veils, each peeled back to reveal another absence. What is it? The question was not shouted but whispered, as though uncertainty itself demanded reverence. Some argued that the anomalies were the scars of time. Radiation over millions of years may have baked its surface into new compounds unknown in our solar system, leaving a skin alien to all familiar categories. Others suspected fragmentation, imagining that 3I Atlas had once been larger, now shattered, its fractured faces scattering sunlight in chaotic patterns. And among the most cautious, a darker speculation hovered. What if the irregularities were not random, but intentional? What if design, not accident, shaped its strange behavior? Few dared say so openly, but the possibility lingered in conference corridors and after-hours debates. NASA's data analysts, trained to distill clarity from faint signals, instead traced uncertainty. The early anomalies became whispers that refused to fade, persisting through every recalibration, every refinement of orbit or brightness. The more closely they studied, the stronger the mystery seemed to grow, as though scrutiny itself nourished its strangeness. Science thrives on anomalies. They are the cracks where new knowledge breaks through. Yet anomalies unsettle because they expose the limits of what we know. For 3I Atlas, the whispers were not loud enough to prove, yet too persistent to dismiss. They pressed against certainty like a steady weight, reminding every observer that the universe is not bound to our categories, nor obliged to our comfort. Thus the anomaly became the story, reshaping the object from mere interstellar stone into a riddle capable of unsettling even the most disciplined minds. The deeper they traced its path, the more troubling the details became. Gravity, cosmic lawgiver, architect of galaxies, sculptor of black holes, should have dictated every detail of its motion. The orbits of objects falling toward the sun are precise, their accelerations written in equations as old as Newton and refined by Einstein. Yet the course of 3I Atlas resisted. At first, the differences were subtle, tiny deviations between prediction and observation, small enough to be dismissed as noise, the limits of instruments pushed too far. But as weeks of data accumulated, the whispers grew louder. The curve of its trajectory hinted at forces beyond gravity alone, as if another, invisible hand had joined the sun's pull. The riddle echoed a memory still raw. Oumuamua, whose unexplained acceleration had haunted debates for years. Could sunlight, pressing against a thin sail-like structure, have nudged that earlier wanderer? Could jets of vapor too faint to see have given it a secret push? Neither explanation had satisfied, and now, in the quiet deviations of 3I Atlas, the same unease returned. Some argued its elongated or fragmented shape could account for the irregularities. Others invoked sublimation too faint for telescopes to catch. But the absence of any visible plume made this fragile. What unseen force, then, was at play? The fear in equations emerges when they refuse to balance. Each mismatch between theory and observation is a fracture line, a reminder that our universal laws may be only partial truths. Doubt seeps through those cracks. Perhaps the anomalies were nothing more than the combined effects of overlooked variables. Or perhaps they hinted at something deeper, a new interaction, a force not yet recognized, evidence of histories so alien that no Earth-born model could contain them. The unease was not about danger but about meaning. If gravity, the most universal of laws, cannot fully describe a small visitor, then perhaps the universe is less universal than we imagined. This is why the riddle unsettled. Gravity is supposed to be the thread tying cosmos to cosmos, binding galaxies, holding stars, writing the great clockwork of planets and comets. To glimpse even the hint of deviation was to wonder if exceptions drift freely between the stars. And so, 3I Atlas glided on, silent, indifferent to the debates and theories it inspired. Each night of observation confirmed its freedom. Each calculation reaffirmed its strangeness. The gravity riddle lingered unresolved, a shadow stretched across equations, and shadows, in science, are often the first sign that something immense waits just beyond the light. The deeper astronomers pressed into the faint signals of 3I Atlas, the more they found themselves drifting into unsettling terrain, spectral echoes that refused to nestle into the familiar boxes of cosmic matter. Normally, light from the sun, reflected back from a wandering body, carries chemical fingerprints like a confession written in photons. Water vapor, frozen carbon dioxide, silicates, organics, metals, each leaves a distinct rhythm etched into the spectrum, telling us with clarity, this is ice, this is stone, this is dust. But when the same techniques were turned upon 3I Atlas, the answers slipped away like smoke. The spectral lines were faint, inconsistent, sometimes dissolving into silence altogether. Glimmers of compounds appeared, only to vanish back into noise. Reflections suggested mixtures too tangled to pass, or perhaps hinted at substances not represented in any terrestrial catalogue. To describe its chemistry was to describe a ghost, more absence than presence. Then came the gleams, moments when the object seemed to reflect light more sharply than a natural body should. Instead of scattering in the diffused manner of rough rock or ice, it occasionally flashed as though across flat surfaces, facets, catching the sun at precise angles. The evidence was thin, but the implication refused to leave. What if some of its surfaces were unusually smooth, unnatural in their reflection? The idea was dismissed in official analyses, but the phrase, unnatural echoes, began to slip into conversations nonetheless. This is the dangerous borderland of science, where anomaly brushes imagination, where gaps in data invite myths to creep in. Many offered explanations rooted in nature. Perhaps cosmic rays, endured for millions of years adrift in interstellar space, had baked its surface into rare materials, exotic compounds unseen in our solar system. Perhaps catastrophic collisions had shattered it, leaving fractured planes glinting like broken glass. But the data never settled. The odd reflections lingered like whispers, subtle and unconfirmed, yet impossible to forget. In private, some scientists admitted that the thought of design had crossed their minds. Could those echoes hint not at accident, but at intent? Could they resemble panels, sails, engineered layers? Few dared speak this aloud, lest they repeat the storm of speculation that once engulfed Oumuamua. Yet silence itself betrayed the weight of the possibility. For an ordinary comet would have silenced such speculation with the obviousness of its tail. An ordinary asteroid would have yielded mineral fingerprints with ease. 3I Atlas did neither. It gave only faint, ambiguous returns haunting every attempt at interpretation. The universe seemed to have placed a mirror in front of us, reflecting not just photons but our deepest uncertainties, fears of isolation, hopes of company, the restless question of whether we are truly alone. Numbers are meant to comfort, equations are supposed to close like doors, locking chaos into patterns. Yet with 3I Atlas, mathematics bred unease. Every attempt to model its trajectory, its light curve, its composition slipped loose, leaving residue of doubt. Scientists, trained to find harmony in motion, heard instead dissonance. The fear here was not impact the object's path, never threatened Earth. The fear came from the equations themselves. Here was a body that appeared to obey the great laws of gravity and motion, but not fully, not consistently. Small mismatches, subtle deviations, unresolved accelerations, each gnawed at confidence. They hinted at missing variables, hidden forces, unrecognized interactions. In astrophysics, fear does not come in monsters but in fractures. When Newton's mechanics or Einstein's relativity prove insufficient to capture what is observed, the abyss cracks open. That abyss haunted those who studied 3I Atlas. Was it merely an irregular shard, its strangeness an illusion born of noisy data? Or was it something larger, a messenger revealing that our understanding of physics remains incomplete? The unease sharpened when set beside its predecessors. Oumuamua had accelerated in ways unexplainable by visible forces. Borisov, though more comet-like, still bore subtle irregularities. Now 3I Atlas joined them with its own refusal to conform. 3 visitors, 3 anomalies. Coincidence, strained credulity. Patterns seemed to form in the dark. For some, the fear lay not in what had been observed, but in what might be revealed if the pattern were pursued. What if these were not debris at all, but something deliberate? What if the discrepancies in velocity and light were not random but engineered? To voice such thoughts was to risk derision, but privately, a few admitted they felt the weight of the possibility. Others looked deeper still, beyond intention, toward physics itself. Perhaps the anomalies pointed not to artifacts but to forces woven invisibly into the fabric of reality. Could there be subtle interactions between matter and the quantum vacuum, manifesting only in objects wandering from other stars? Could dark energy, the mysterious agent pushing galaxies apart, exert influence at smaller scales than we imagined? If so, then 3I Atlas was not simply a curiosity, but a crack in the edifice of physics itself. Fear in equations is quiet. It is a note held too long, humming under the symphony of certainty. It unsettles not because it shouts, but because it refuses to fade. That is what 3I Atlas became, not a threat to Earth, but an abyss carved into the heart of our mathematics. Certainty, for scientists, is a kind of safety. To lose it is to glimpse how fragile our grasp truly island. And so the whispers grew speculation born in the spaces between data points, dangerous currents tugging at the edges of reason, reminders that the universe will not always fit the nets we cast across it. But when anomalies persist, when equations resist closure, the whisper grows louder, creeping from the background into the foreground of thought. With 3I Atlas, some of those whispers carried the shadow of intelligence. It was not the first time such thoughts had stirred. In 2017, Oumuamua had provoked similar conjecture. Its unexplained acceleration, its strange, elongated form, its silence where activity should have been these, had led a handful of voices to wonder aloud if it was natural at all, or rather the relic of technology. One paper, careful but daring, suggested it could have been a light sail, a wafer-thin sheet driven by starlight, perhaps the discarded probe of a civilization long extinguished. The idea was rejected by most, but it seeded itself in the public imagination and lingered in the private doubts of some astronomers. With 3I Atlas, those doubts returned, circling like ghosts around every irregular reflection, every refusal to shed a comet's tail, every erratic flicker in its light. Could this too be artificial? Could it be an artificial comet, abandoned for millennia, now passing through our system by chance? If so, had it once been a probe meant to watch, or was it nothing more than debris, cast-off remnants from unknown makers? NASA never endorsed such speculation, but the silence in official statements did not erase the unease. Individual scientists admitted that they could not fully dismiss the thought. The SETI network, sensitive radio dishes angled toward the stars, was turned deliberately upon it. They strained for whispers across the spectrum, hoping for any signal, any intentional pattern. None came. And yet, silence was not proof of absence. What if it had been adrift for millions of years, its transmitters long dead, its purpose long forgotten, its builders lost to time? The fear of intelligence was never just about aliens. It was about reflection. It was about what it would mean for humanity if the universe bore other minds, capable of shaping matter, sending fragments into the night. To acknowledge such a thing would be to both expand and diminish us, expanding the cosmos into a shared stage, while stripping us of centrality. To discover intelligence in 3I Atlas would be to find a mirror in the dark, one that reflects not only our smallness, but also a possible future, where our own relics drift long after we are gone. The language of speculation remained restrained. Unusual reflectivity, possible artificiality, low probability hypotheses, but behind the caveats, unease grew. To dismiss the idea outright felt premature. To embrace it outright felt reckless. Most scientists walked the middle ground, living in the tension of uncertainty. And in that space of uncertainty, imagination flourished. In the end, 3I Atlas gave no definitive sign of being anything other than natural. Yet the shadow of intelligence lingered over its study like a ghost, not because of evidence, but because of absence. Sometimes, an open door unsettles more than a closed one. As the data deepened, Scientists found themselves unable to avoid comparison with its enigmatic predecessor. Oumuamua had left wounds in certainty, questions still raw, debates still unresolved. The comparison was inevitable, and it brought no comfort. If Oumuamua had been strange, then 3I Atlas was its phantom twin, not identical, but eerily resonant, echoing the same defiance of expectation. Oumuamua had tumbled without a halo, accelerated without visible cause, flashed light curves that hinted at unnatural elongation. Its true nature remained contested, a shard of nitrogen ice, a fragment shedding invisible hydrogen, or perhaps something technological adrift. It departed, leaving speculation in its wake, not clarity. Then came 3I Atlas. At first glance, it did not mimic Oumuamua exactly. Its brightness was steadier, its course less erratic, yet the similarities haunted every discussion. Both carried hyperbolic paths, both moved in silence where activity was expected, both dissolved into ambiguity when spectra were sought. Two objects, separated by years, yet bound in their refusal to be named. Borisov, the second interstellar visitor, seemed almost reassuring by contrast, a comet complete with tail, behaving exactly as comets should. But now, in the shadow of Oumuamua and Atlas, Borisov appeared less as the rule than the exception. If 2 out of 3 visitors defied classification, then perhaps the anomaly itself was the rule. Coincidence strained belief. Slowly, the phantom twin comparison began to spread in papers, in cautious presentations, in murmured conversations. 3I Atlas was not a replica of Oumuamua, but it carried its ghost. Every irregular flicker, every spectral silence, every hyperbolic arc seemed to echo the first enigma. It was as if the cosmos had chosen to replay a theme, not repetition, but variation, like a composer weaving old notes into a new, darker movement. The implications rippled uneasily. Were these the first glimpses of a broader class of interstellar wanderers, objects once invisible to us, now entering our awareness with properties that defy terrestrial categories? Were they the shards of alien worlds, carrying signatures of exotic physics, materials never formed within our system? Or was it coincidence, 2 rare visitors arriving in uncanny succession, their strangeness magnified only by their proximity in time? For the public, the connection was irresistible. Headlines invoked Oumuamua the moment 3I Atlas was named. Another messenger, another riddle from the stars. NASA urged caution, insisting speculation must not outpace data. But caution could not erase the chill of recognition. To see 3I Atlas was to see Oumuamua again, distorted but familiar, like a reflection in a warped mirror. The phantom twin explained nothing. It only doubled the question. In that doubling lay the deeper fear that we were not confronting an isolated anomaly, but the first movements of a larger, more disquieting symphony of mysteries drifting into our skies. By now, the catalogue of anomalies surrounding 3I Atlas had grown thick enough to strain natural explanations. Theories multiplied: fragments of nitrogen ice, shards of exotic rock, relics of long-vanished systems, each one weaving fragments of data into coherence, yet none fitting without seams. The debates swelled into turbulence, not just mathematical but conceptual, pressing against the boundaries of accepted theory. And in those debates, the frameworks of modern physics were summoned, Einstein's general relativity foremost among them, as scientists reached for anchors against the growing sense that something had slipped loose from our grasp. Gravity, in its elegance, should have described the motion of 3I Atlas completely. Every curve, every acceleration, every retreat into the dark ought to have been accounted for by Newton's equations and Einstein's refinements. Yet the data carried shadows, small mismatches, deviations that clung stubbornly to its orbit, faint but persistent. Could it be, some asked in hushed tones, that such visitors revealed subtleties in space-time itself, details our equations only approximate? If so, then 3I Atlas was not merely an interstellar stone, but a wandering probe of relativity's limits, a test particle slipping through geometries perhaps slightly different from our own. Inevitably, quantum theory entered the discussion. At the smallest scales, the vacuum is not empty but restless, shimmering with ghostly fluctuations, virtual particles that appear and vanish like sparks on an invisible sea. Could a fragment adrift for millions of years across that seething fabric be altered in ways imperceptible within our calmer solar system? Perhaps the scarred surface of 3I Atlas was a record of such quantum tides, its strange reflections, a language written by forces we cannot yet measure. Others reached further still, invoking cosmic inflation, the violent swelling thought to have marked the universe's first moments. If objects like this had endured since those primordial epochs, might they carry imprints of that ancient violence, matter shaped in conditions utterly alien to our epoch? To entertain the idea was to imagine 3I Atlas, not just as a traveler from another star system, but as a shard carrying whispers from the dawn of time itself. The turbulence of theory mirrored a deeper truth. Every framework of physics is both a map and a prison. Relativity describes gravity until it doesn't. Quantum mechanics explains particles until they slip through its net. Between these domains yawns a chasm where dark matter and dark energy reside. Phenomena known only by their effects, invisible in substance. Could 3I Atlas have wandered by accident into that chasm, carrying traces of interactions we cannot yet name? Conferences swelled with debate. One camp insisted that natural processes must suffice erosion, radiation, fragmentation, coincidences of geometry. Another, quieter but insistent, pointed to the persistence of anomalies as evidence of something deeper. Theories collided like particles in an accelerator, releasing sparks of insight but no lasting consensus. This turbulence was not failure but necessity. In science, contradictions are the crucibles of progress, and 3I Atlas, silent and indifferent, had become such a crucible. By refusing to conform, it forced Einstein's gravity, quantum fields, and cosmic inflation into the same uneasy conversation, a reminder of how far we remain from the dream of unification. Yet behind the mathematics lurked a more unsettling possibility. Perhaps the object itself was not anomalous at all. Perhaps the universe is stranger than our models, and our expectations are the true exception. Among the swirl of speculation, one hypothesis gained unexpected traction. It was as unsettling as it was elegant. Perhaps the strangeness of 3I Atlas was bound to dark energy itself. The very phrase carries dread. Dark energy is no substance to be held, no particle we can detect. It is an inference, a ghost woven into the equations, invoked to explain why the universe does not slow in its expansion but accelerates. It accounts for nearly 70% of the cosmos, yet remains invisible, detectable only in its sweeping effects. To invoke it in the context of a single wandering fragment was bold, and yet, to some theorists, the leap was not impossible. If dark energy is stitched into the fabric of space itself, might it not sculpt the motion of objects adrift across interstellar gulfs? Could 3I Atlas, after millions of years wandering that unseen ocean, bear subtle scars of its influence, accelerations too faint for Newton to predict, reflections too alien to match our mineral catalogues? The possibility unsettled, for it shifted the mystery outward from the object itself to the cosmos it traversed. If dark energy could be glimpsed in the peculiar journey of this one fragment, then all things, stars, planets, dust, even us, are equally ensnared. Its strangeness would not be unique but universal, a reminder that every familiar orbit, every moment of stability, is nested within forces we cannot see. Some theorists imagined interstellar debris as natural detectors of dark energy, their trajectories deviating subtly, betraying the properties of the hidden field. Others speculated further, suggesting that anomalies like those of 3I Atlas might mark regions where the cosmic field is uneven, where the expansion of space itself varies locally. If true, then this fragment was not only a visitor from another star system but a messenger carrying news of spacetime's own fabric. Yet this speculation bore another, darker edge. If dark energy truly governs the universe, it writes not only motion but destiny. It will drive galaxies apart, extinguish stars, and stretch spacetime until even atoms may dissolve. To see its hand in the passage of 3I Atlas was to glimpse that distant future, written in miniature in the path of a single stone. For most astronomers, the connection remained tenuous, unproven, yet the fact that it was voiced at all revealed how deeply unsettling the object had become. An ordinary comet would never have provoked such ideas. Only something that refused classification, that whispered of impossibility, could compel scientists to contemplate whether the greatest mystery in cosmology might be inscribed in a fleeting wanderer. Thus, 3I Atlas became more than itself. No longer merely a shard of matter, it was a lens through which humanity glimpsed its ignorance, a fragment of interstellar silence that invited thoughts of expansion, decay, and the invisible engine pulling the cosmos apart. And from dark energy the speculation spread further still, into realms even less tangible. Some physicists dared to wonder if 3I Atlas might be not just a traveler from another star, but a shard from another universe entirely. The idea was audacious, almost heretical. Yet it emerged naturally in the turbulence of unanswered questions. For inflationary cosmology, which describes the universe's first moments as an eruption of exponential expansion, predicts that ours may not be alone. If inflation can happen once, then perhaps it happens endlessly, bubbling new universes from the quantum vacuum like foam cresting upon a black ocean. Each bubble is a cosmos entire, with its own laws, its own constants, its own fate. And if so, then what separates them may not be walls but membranes, fragile boundaries, where one fabric brushes against another. Could 3I Atlas, some dared to ask, be evidence of such a crossing? Could it be a shard expelled in the collision of cosmic bubbles, flung across a border invisible to us? Its anomalous path, its refusal to mimic comets or asteroids, its spectral silence were these, not the very fingerprints of matter born under laws ever so slightly different from our own. The suggestion was too speculative for many, a flourish of philosophy rather than a statement of science. Yet even skeptics admitted the haunting logic. If universes multiply, then crossings must occur, and when they do, fragments may wander between them, carrying chemistries our instruments cannot parse. For those who allowed the thought, the vision was staggering. If 3I Atlas hailed from another cosmos, then it was no alien probe, but a relic of existence itself, a mute declaration that reality is larger than we can conceive, that the physics we treat as universal are mere customs of our local bubble. Its silence would not be refusal but testimony, a mirror held against our universe, whispering, "You are not alone, not even in reality." This interpretation, a multiverse mirror, remained at the fringes more poetry than physics, but it carried weight because anomalies demand boldness. To wave them away, as coincidence felt insufficient. To invoke the multiverse was terrifying in grandeur. Between those poles, 3I Atlas drifted, confirming nothing, denying nothing, leaving behind only echoes of possibility. In this way, the object became more than a curiosity. It became a metaphysical provocation, a reminder that the greatest unknowns may not be in the stars themselves, but in the frameworks that hold them. And if the multiverse seemed dizzying in its vastness, another hypothesis brought the dread closer, sharper: the false vacuum. To physicists, this phrase is no metaphor. It is a danger written into the mathematics of quantum field theory. Our universe, they warn, may not rest in ultimate stability. Instead, it may teeter in a false vacuum, a valley of energy that feels permanent but is not. Somewhere, deeper still, lies a truer vacuum, more stable, more final. If ever triggered, its arrival would unravel everything we know. The fear is not fantasy. It emerges naturally from the Higgs field, the all-pervading field that gives mass to particles. Calculations hint that the Higgs potential may sit in a false minimum. If so, all reality exists on borrowed time. A fluctuation, a high-energy event, a quantum tunneling too rare to imagine, could ignite collapse. A bubble of true vacuum would form, racing outward at the speed of light, devouring all in silence. No warning, no defense, no survival. It was in the shadow of this nightmare that a few voices linked 3I Atlas. What if its odd behavior, its irregular path and spectral silence, were not quirks of composition but hints of physics altered? What if it carried the scars of a region where the vacuum had already shifted? Could this shard have been flung from a corner of space where the very laws had collapsed, its atoms shaped under rules alien to ours? To connect an interstellar rock with the death of all things was audacious, unbearable, but in late-night conversations, the thought took root. For if true, then 3I Atlas was not just a visitor but a harbinger. Its arrival would be a warning, proof that our universe is less stable than it seems, that catastrophe is not only possible but inevitable. Most scientists resisted such speculation. There was no evidence, only conjecture, and to tie a fragment of matter to existential doom was a leap too far. And yet the fear persisted, not from proof but from plausibility. False vacuum decay is a recognized possibility, even if remote, and 3I Atlas, with its refusal to conform, provided fertile ground for such fears to grow. In the quiet of observatories, the question was whispered, never published: what if this is the sign? What if, in watching 3I Atlas glide past the sun, we were glimpsing the first shard of collapse unfolding elsewhere? Not asteroid, not comet, but messenger bearing news that the laws of physics themselves are unstable. Even as fantasy, the idea carried power. It reminded humanity of fragility, of how thin the floor beneath us might be. For if false vacuum decay is real, then everything, atoms, galaxies, life, exists on a precarious stage. And 3I Atlas, silent and unyielding, became a symbol of that precarity, a fragment from the edge of existence itself. Silence can wound more deeply than sound. When 3I Atlas was first confirmed as interstellar, one of the immediate questions was whether it might transmit, whether an echo of intelligence might ride on invisible waves. If its strangeness hinted at more than geology, then perhaps the ultimate test was to listen. And so, SETI responded. Radio dishes turned toward the patch of sky where the object moved, sweeping frequencies, combing the static for rhythm, for intent. The expectation was low. Such visitors are almost certainly lifeless shards. But the memory of Oumuamua lingered, caution clung, and 3I Atlas carried enough echoes to justify vigilance. For nights, antennas listened. For nights, the universe answered only with silence. No narrowband transmissions, no pulses etched with artificial precision, only silence. But silence is not the same as certainty. A probe could slumber, long abandoned, or function in ways beyond our comprehension. A structure drifting for millions of years might have ceased operating altogether. Thus, while silence was duly recorded, it never closed the question. It left behind a shadow of possibility, an unanswered chord still vibrating in the air. Optical searches followed, hunting for flashes of light, laser bursts, reflective glints that might betray controlled communication. Again, nothing. The silence grew heavier, not from what was heard, but from what was not. Natural objects declare themselves with ease: comets, by their vaporous tails, asteroids by their mineral fingerprints. But 3I Atlas spoke only in fragments, and then withheld the rest. Its refusal to speak became, paradoxically, a kind of voice. Among astronomers, the phrase, "signals in silence," began to circulate not as evidence of technology, but as a reminder that absence can provoke speculation as surely as presence. For the silence did not feel accidental. Why would a comet remain so mute? Why would its spectrum dissolve into ambiguity? its orbit wobble against prediction, its composition vanish into uncertainty. Rational answers abounded: chance, coincidence, radiation, collisions, time. Interstellar space is a crucible of alteration, and not every puzzle demands intelligence behind it. And yet the possibility persisted. What if the silence was not absence but restraint? What if it was not void but choice? The emotional weight of these questions pressed as heavily as the scientific ones. Humanity has always asked whether it is alone. Each anomaly summons that longing to the surface. And when instruments strain for a signal and return only void, imagination rushes to fill it. 3i Atlas offered such a void, deep enough to echo with both fear and wonder. Silence, in the context of mystery, is never empty. It is a mirror, reflecting not what is there, but what we hope or dread might be. And so the watching became relentless, an obsession born of urgency. The object would not linger. Its hyperbolic path granted only a fleeting window before it slipped into the abyss once more. Every instrument capable of turning toward it did so. Hubble, old but unblinking, swung its mirrors to catch the faintest glimmers. Against the scatter of stars, it gathered points of light, tiny, yet priceless. Ground-based observatories joined the vigil. The great dishes of Chile's Atacama Desert, where the thin air sharpened starlight, the towering domes of Hawaii sweeping their arcs across the Pacific sky. Pan-STARRS and Atlas refined the orbital solutions, adjusting brightness models, teasing at its erratic spin. And then came Webb. The James Webb Space Telescope, designed to pierce the atmospheres of exoplanets and glimpse the first galaxies, turned its golden eyes toward a much nearer enigma. With infrared sensitivity, it sought what optics could not see: signatures of molecules, heat patterns, hidden truths. Yet Webb, too, found ambiguity. Its data hinted at materials difficult to classify, spectral lines too faint, too irregular, too strange to fit neatly into mineral catalogues. It was as if 3i Atlas spoke in a dialect of matter alien to our system, its language undecipherable. Beyond telescopes, deep survey arrays mapped its motion across the sky, searching for subtle variations invisible to human sight. Radio observatories continued their vigil, ears pressed to the void, hearing only the static hiss of cosmic background. Together, these efforts formed a rare global unity. Earth's instruments, scattered across continents and orbit, woven into a single network, straining to catch the whispers of a fading guest. And still the object resisted. Every sharpened lens, every polished mirror, every antenna only deepened the enigma. The outlines of mystery grew sharper, its resolution retreated further away. For the scientists, the experience was humbling. Here was a visitor no larger than a mountain, perhaps smaller, and yet it withstood the collective might of our technology. Hubble, Webb, the ground-based giants of Chile and Hawaii, all humbled by a faint shard gliding indifferently through the sun's reach. Some found comfort in this failure, a reminder of the universe's inexhaustible depths. Others felt frustration, even dread. If so much effort yielded so little, how many other mysteries slipped past unnoticed? How fragile is our knowledge, if even one visitor could outwit all our tools? Still, the effort was not wasted. Data had been gathered, trajectories refined, light curves plotted, spectra archived. Humanity had captured the footprints of a traveler from another star, though they were footprints pressed into shifting sand, suggestive, incomplete, quickly erased. As 3i Atlas drifted outward, beyond Webb's golden mirrors, beyond the reach of vigilance itself, we were left not with answers, but with the sharp silhouette of ignorance. And while telescopes strained for light, another community turned toward a different toolkit: the particle physicists. For in laboratories like CERN, the fabric of reality is recreated in miniature. Atoms smashed into quarks, quarks into fragments of primordial fire. They wondered if the anomalies of this traveler, its spectral silence, its odd acceleration, its refusal to behave as comet or asteroid, might be explained not by astronomy alone, but by physics at its deepest strata. Could 3I Atlas be a shard formed under conditions echoing those of the first seconds after creation? Could its atoms bear architectures unknown, its surface the scar of processes absent from our system? In this way, the enigma migrated from telescopes to colliders, from sky watchers to field theorists, from the vault of the heavens to the smallest accelerators of Earth, as if to remind us that mystery in the cosmos is mystery in ourselves, mirrored across scales we barely grasp. Some theorists dared to model 3I Atlas as a fragment of exotic matter, its chemistry tilted toward ratios of heavy elements uncommon here, perhaps forged in the collapse of a distant supernova or in the cataclysmic embrace of merging neutron stars. Others leaned toward stranger frontiers, imagining that its peculiar behavior reflected subtle interactions with the quantum vacuum itself, pushes and pulls too delicate to manifest in ordinary bodies tethered to the sun's gravity. In these debates, particle accelerators became more than machines. They became metaphors, laboratories of speculation. If anomalies like these could ever be mimicked in controlled collisions, then perhaps the silence of 3I Atlas might be coaxed into voice. Yet colliders also inspired darker hypotheses. Could its strange acceleration come from an inner store of volatile compounds, chemicals unknown in our system but ordinary elsewhere? If so, then this was not just a drifting stone, but a vessel carrying a chemistry alien to Earth, volatile cargo that, under the right conditions, might erupt in sudden outbursts, or in something entirely unfamiliar. The idea of collisions unfolded further. What if 3I Atlas itself was the scarred relic of one, a shard torn from the crust of a young planet, shattered in violence we will never witness, flung outward into exile, wandering for eons before brushing against the light of our sun? Its fractured reflections, its strange angular glints, could then be read as testimony to that primeval catastrophe, a fossil of a world erased. To frame it in the language of colliders was to confront scale itself. In Geneva, protons smashed together at nearly the speed of light, birthing particles too fleeting to survive in nature. In the cosmos, stars explode, planets collide, galaxies hurl matter across gulfs that no machine can dream to replicate. 3I Atlas seemed to bridge those scales, a particle on the vast stage of astronomy, carrying within it physics written in unfamiliar ink. And yet, as models multiplied, none congealed into certainty. The silence remained, unmoved by speculation. Particle physics could provide metaphors, frameworks, analogies, but the object itself offered no confirmation. It was as though the universe had presented a riddle too large for colliders, too fleeting for telescopes, a puzzle scaled deliberately beyond our reach. Still, the pursuit was not in vain. In chasing the anomalies of 3I Atlas, science was stretched outward, weaving connections between the immense and the minute, between the collisions of worlds and the collisions of particles. In those connections lay a deeper reminder that the universe is one continuous fabric, stitched across scales, its pattern only dimly glimpsed. But weeks turned into months, and a sobering realization settled over the community. Certainty was slipping away. Despite the vigilance of Hubble, Webb, Pan-STARRS, Atlas, and the world's observatories, the picture remained fractured. The visitor had swung past the sun, swept through the inner system, and now it was retreating into the deep, fainter with every night. Data still trickled in, but the clarity scientists had hungered for never arrived. Astronomy is a science of distance and faintness. It builds truth from fragments. Yet with 3I Atlas, the fragments were too few, too contradictory. The light curve hinted at rotation but never fixed it. The spectrum gestured at compounds but dissolved into noise before naming them. The trajectory exposed deviations but never strongly enough to rewrite gravity's laws. At this edge of knowledge, humility grows. To admit uncertainty is not defeat, but strength, and yet it unsettles, for scientists are trained to wrestle noise into signal, to make the sky yield. When the sky does not, when the cosmos withholds, it feels personal, as though the failure is ours rather than nature's. In conferences and journals, the language turned cautious, possibly, tentatively, likely. Models proliferated: cometary remnant, asteroid fragment, exotic ice, engineered sail, a shard from another cosmos. Each was plausible, none complete. No single theory stitched the fragments into harmony. And so, 3i Atlas joined a small family of mysteries that science cannot yet explain, perhaps may never explain. Its strangeness was undeniable, its refusal to conform plain. But in the absence of decisive data, certainty melted into probability, and probability thinned into possibility. What remained was not knowledge, but ambiguity, a reminder that the universe resists being fully known. Yet the boundary of certainty is never barren, it is fertile ground. From Oumuamua to Borisov to 3i Atlas, anomalies have forced astronomy to widen its questions, to tether cosmology to particle physics, to imagine futures where interstellar debris is not rare exception but common inheritance. The object may fade, its mysteries unresolved, but the questions it leaves behind will ripple forward, shaping inquiry for decades. Perhaps that is its gift, for when certainty falters, philosophy enters. The mystery of 3i Atlas was never only telescopes and equations, it was also meaning. In its silence, its contradictions, its refusal to conform, it stirred the oldest questions about reality, about our smallness, about the relationship between knowledge and wonder. Scientists are trained to resist philosophy, to cling to data, yet the greatest minds have always bridged both. Stephen Hawking reminded us that the unknown is not void but frontier, warning that the laws we wield may be scaffolds, temporary truths awaiting collapse. Carl Sagan, decades earlier, spoke of interstellar travel and the pale fragility of Earth, urging humility before immensity. Their voices echoed in the discourse around 3i Atlas. Here was an object that laid bare our ignorance, forcing reflection not only on physics, but on existence itself. Some philosophers of science suggested the anomaly was less a puzzle of astronomy than a lesson in epistemology, the study of knowledge itself. Why do we seek certainty so fervently? Why is ambiguity intolerable? In a universe defined by vastness, perhaps the very expectation of complete explanation is itself a kind of arrogance. 3i Atlas reminded humanity that some questions may remain unanswered, and that awe is not weakened by ignorance but sharpened by it. Others saw in the visitor a mirror of myth. For millennia, cultures lifted their eyes to wandering lights and told stories of gods, omens, and messengers. Modern science stripped away those myths, replacing them with equations and data. Yet when a fragment from beyond the stars entered our skies, the old instinct returned. Was this a sign? A reminder? A reflection of how fragile our certainties truly are? In this sense, 3i Atlas became more than matter. It became a philosophical provocation. It asked whether reality is a closed book, waiting to be read, or an endless sea with no horizon. It asked whether our worth lies in mastery of physics, or in the willingness to wonder. Its silence was not just a scientific puzzle but a philosophical one. If the universe speaks in riddles, perhaps our role is not always to solve them, but to listen. In listening lies humility. In humility, wisdom. And in that wisdom, a different kind of knowledge not of what the universe is, but of what it means to be alive within it. But ignorance carries danger. With 3i Atlas, the sharpest danger was not in the object itself, but in what it revealed about our limits. The visitor posed no direct threat. Its trajectory would never cross Earth, but its refusal to be understood became a new peril, the peril of blindness. For centuries, failure to interpret the heavens carried consequences. A misread eclipse or comet might once have meant famine or fear. Today, the stakes are different. In a cosmos where fragments from other systems can arrive unannounced, our inability to understand them leaves us vulnerable, not to superstition, but to miscalculation. What if one day a body like 3I Atlas is massive, unpredictable, and on a collision course? To face such a visitor without comprehension would be to meet catastrophe unprepared. This was the quiet dread beneath the debates. The danger was not that 3I Atlas would destroy us, but that its mystery exposed the fragility of our predictive power. If an object so small could confound our finest telescopes, our sharpest theories, what other forces might lie just beyond our grasp, waiting unseen? Ignorance does not stay confined to science. It spills into imagination, and imagination into fear. Journalists whispered of alien probes while scientists labored to contain the noise, yet denial carries its own risks. To dismiss too quickly plants seeds of mistrust. To remain silent invites speculation. Ignorance became fertile soil for both dread and wonder. Some thinkers argued this was no weakness but a gift. Ignorance is the engine of science, the spark of curiosity. Without mystery, no progress. And yet, when the mystery feels too large, too immovable, progress trembles and fear creeps in. 3I Atlas, balanced on that knife's edge, the line between inspiration and paralysis. The fear of ignorance grew sharper when placed against humanity's smallness. Our species has mastered only one planet, touched only a few nearby worlds with machines, glimpsed only a fraction of the universe with instruments. Against those limits, the arrival of something that refuses explanation feels like rebuke. We are still children at the edge of a dark forest, lanterns too dim to reveal the whole. The danger of ignorance is not just practical but existential. It shows how easily we mistake understanding for mastery, how thin our knowledge is against the abyss. 3I Atlas, in its silence, became a lesson that the greatest peril may not lie in what we discover, but in what slips past us unnoticed, uncomprehended, unresolved. Though the visitor slipped harmlessly through the solar system, the thought that lingered was not about what it did, but about what it implied. Its very presence proved recurrence. If one interstellar object could pass through, and then another, and then a third, what is to prevent countless others from following? The question was no longer times, if times we would see another, but times when times, and what form it might take. Astronomers began to imagine a future crowded with such wanderers. Perhaps the galaxy is thick with debris, ejected during the violent births and deaths of planetary systems. Perhaps Oumuamua, Borisov, and Atlas were not rare miracles, but the first raindrops before a storm, hints of a constant interstellar traffic flowing invisibly across stellar borders. The thought brought both awe and unease. Awe, because each new visitor might carry secrets of distant worlds, alien chemistries, histories etched in scars we can scarcely read. Unease, because not all visitors will be harmless. A larger fragment, dark and fast, could one day arrive on a path less forgiving. The Earth's craters, the record of extinctions, stand as reminders of how cosmic impacts shape destiny. To imagine an interstellar body of sufficient mass striking our planet is to imagine catastrophe beyond measure. Yet beyond danger lies another possibility, that the next visitor will be stranger still. 3I Atlas already resisted categories, already carried anomalies. What if the next offers new contradictions, new spectral silences, new gravitational riddles? Each arrival deepens the pattern. With every unexplained visitor, the suspicion grows that these are not mere rocks, but fragments of processes, perhaps even designs, that defy our imagination. For NASA, such possibilities have already begun to shape action. New survey telescopes are rising on mountaintops and in deserts, engineered with faster eyes and deeper sensitivity, built to sweep the sky before such visitors vanish again into silence. Yet even with vigilance, there are limits. These fragments arrive unannounced, uninvited, slipping quickly past before we can gather more than fragments of truth. To intercept one, to send a probe across its path, would require a readiness, humanity does not yet possess a readiness not only of technology, but of will. The recognition that 3I Atlas may not be the last, that others are certain to come, carries the weight of both challenge and warning. We may not be prepared when the next one arrives. And still, in the quiet reflections of those who watch the stars, a more ancient instinct stirs. What if these visitors are not random? What if they arrive with rhythm, with meaning, with a purpose we cannot yet decipher? To ask this is to step across the line between science and myth. But myth has always shadowed astronomy. A sky filled with strangers is a sky filled with stories, and each story carries both wonder and dread. In this sense, 3I Atlas was not the end of mystery, but the beginning of a realization. The solar system is not isolated, not a sanctuary sealed from intrusion. It is open, exposed, threaded into the currents of the galaxy, and the galaxy does not move in silence. Visitors will return, some may clarify, some may terrify, and in their passing, humanity will continue to measure itself against the unknown. To reflect on 3I Atlas was to confront not only its peculiarities, but the immensity that made them possible. For an object to cross from one star system to another demands not centuries but millions of years, patience beyond comprehension, endurance beyond imagination. Against that immensity, humanity appears fragile. The scale was written into every calculation. To us, the solar system is vast, but in the galaxy, it is a mote of dust. Light itself takes hours to cross from the sun to the outer planets, yet tens of thousands of years to traverse the Milky Way. And here was 3I Atlas, a fragment that had done precisely that, not in a single lifetime, not in 1,000, but across epochs long enough to erase civilizations like waves erasing footprints in sand. This scale diminishes us. Our spacecraft crawl at tens of kilometers per second. 3I Atlas raced faster still, indifferent to our slowness. The Voyagers, proud emblems of human reach, have only just stepped into interstellar space, and even they will wander for millennia before approaching another star. Meanwhile, fragments like Atlas drift freely, without engines, without design, without urgency, carrying the legacies of their origins across gulfs we can barely imagine. The contrast carries weight. Humanity measures time in days and years. The cosmos measures it in epochs. We see centuries as history. The universe treats them as moments. To stand beneath the stars is to feel this dissonance, and to watch an interstellar visitor glide across the sky is to feel it in the marrow. And yet there is comfort in this recognition. If 3I Atlas can endure millions of years of wandering, perhaps the universe itself carries memory. Perhaps fragments like this are records, archives of collisions, destructions, and creations we will never see. Each one is a library written in stone and ice, drifting between stars, carrying stories no mind has read. Still, the challenge remains. How can a species so small hope to engage with such immensity? Our telescopes gather only glimpses, our theories stumble at anomalies, our language stretches for metaphors, oceans, deserts, shadows, to capture what scale denies. The presence of 3I Atlas did not narrow the gap. It widened it, a reminder that the cosmos is not proportioned for our comprehension. The fear born of this scale is subtle but sharp. If we are so small, what else moves unseen? If we are so brief, what dramas unfold while we sleep? The arrival of 3I Atlas was not merely an astronomical event, but a confrontation with scale itself, a reminder that to exist as humans is to live on the smallest rung of cosmic immensity. And yet, paradoxically, that very smallness makes our awareness all the more remarkable. To measure an interstellar visitor, to name it, to record its fleeting presence, this is humanity's defiance against scale. We may be tiny, but we are awake, and in being awake, we claim a place in the story, however brief. The enigma of 3I Atlas revealed something more than anomalies in data. It exposed how science itself responds to the unknown. For every contradiction, scientists reached for sharper instruments, deeper calculations, bolder theories. In doing so, they tested not only their models but the very method of knowing. This became the test of science. Could tools fashioned for the familiar rise to confront the unfamiliar? Astronomy has always thrived on patience and humility. From the first clay maps of constellations to the arrays of orbiting telescopes, it has been the art of waiting, of assembling truth from faint signals. But interstellar visitors strain that discipline to its breaking point. They do not linger, they do not return, they pass quickly, offering only a brief window before vanishing forever. To study them is to wrestle against time itself. With 3i Atlas, the struggle was raw. Observatories across the globe coordinated, pooling their photons into shared archives, chasing the faintest variations of brightness and motion. Analysts refined orbital models to impossible precision, searching for deviations smaller than certainty itself. Theories proliferated, some cautious, some daring, and each was tested against fragments of evidence. The global effort revealed science at its most vulnerable and its most noble. Vulnerable because the data was never enough. Noble because inquiry pressed forward regardless. The lesson was plain. Science is not the possession of certainty, but the pursuit of it. And the pursuit itself is what 3i Atlas gave us. Its strangeness forced us to expand imagination, to bridge the scales of the particle and the galaxy, to confront ignorance not as void but as frontier. Its silence sharpened awe. Its anomalies reminded us that the cosmos is inexhaustible. Its refusal to be understood reminded us that we are still learning how to listen. To link cosmology with particle physics, to braid astronomy with philosophy and speculation, was to discover that doubt itself is not weakness, but a sharpened edge. It honed the questions, drove the search for answers, even as frustration slipped in like fog. If Hubble, JWST, and the most advanced observatories on Earth could not pin down the nature of a single wandering fragment, then what hope was there for the countless mysteries still hidden in the dark? Yet here, too, lay the essence of science. Progress does not emerge from conquering every puzzle, but from widening the horizon of inquiry. Each anomaly opens a new door. Each failure to explain marks the threshold of future discovery. The test of science, then, was never whether 3i Atlas could be fully explained, but whether the community could face the unknown without surrendering to denial or superstition. In acknowledging the gaps, in resisting premature closure, science proved its resilience. The object left unanswered questions, but also a legacy of sharpened awareness, refined methods, and a deeper humility. In that sense, 3i Atlas was less a riddle to solve than a mirror held to science itself. It revealed the limits of our instruments, the persistence of our curiosity, and the courage required to dwell in uncertainty. The visitor passed, but the test remained, echoing in every telescope turned toward the night. As 3i Atlas receded into the darkness, its scientific puzzles gave way to something more intimate, reflection on the fears it awakened. The fragment itself was silent, harmless, slipping by without disruption. Yet in its silence, humanity found its own vulnerability reflected back. What we fear most is often not the object, but what it reveals about us. For centuries, the skies have inspired awe and dread alike. Comets once heralded disaster, omens of plague or the death of kings. Meteors were arrows from gods, portents of wrath. The age of reason tamed those fears with orbits and equations, transforming prophecy into physics. And yet, the arrival of 3i Atlas stirred something older, more primal. It reminded us that the unknown still has the power to disturb, not because it threatens to strike, but because it shows how fragile our knowledge truly island. The mirror of fear it carried was subtle but profound. It reflected human insecurity, the realization that the solar system is not sealed, that bodies from the void can intrude at any moment. It reflected intellectual fragility, the recognition that even with our most advanced instruments, we could not fully decipher a single visitor. And it reflected existential fragility, the suspicion that our place in the cosmos is smaller, weaker, and more precarious than we dare to admit. Yet some saw the mirror differently. Fear is not only paralysis, it can also be illumination. To be unsettled is to be awakened. If 3I Atlas reflected humanity's vulnerability, it also reflected its capacity for growth. In confronting the unknown, we learn humility. In grappling with anomalies, we sharpen our tools. Fear becomes the shadow that outlines wonder, the darkness that gives meaning to light. Still, the unease lingered. In whispered conversations, scientists admitted that the visitor had shaken them not because they believed it was dangerous, but because it showed how quickly certainty can collapse. Humanity prides itself on mastery, on equations that map orbits and technologies that send probes across the void. And yet here was a fragment, smaller than a mountain, silent as stone, that defied classification. If something so slight could unravel our models, what of the greater mysteries still hidden in the galaxy's dark? In that sense, 3I Atlas was less an intruder than a teacher. Its lesson lay not in what it was, but in what it revealed. That fear is born not from danger but from meaning, not from impact but from implication. The mirror it held showed humanity its fragility, but also its courage. To feel fear and still pursue understanding is the essence of science. To tremble before the unknown and still reach outward is the essence of being human. And when the fear subsided, what remained was older, gentler, and perhaps more enduring: wonder. For all its silence, for all its refusal to be categorized, 3I Atlas reminded us of the strangeness of existence itself. Awe and mystery are not intrusions upon science, they are its lifeblood. Without them, observation is sterile, numbers are empty. With them, even the faintest flicker of light across a telescope's sensor becomes a doorway into meaning. The persistence of wonder rose from the same qualities that had provoked unease. Its silence was unsettling, yes, but it was also beautiful. To imagine a fragment drifting for millions of years, untouched and unobserved, until this fleeting moment, is to imagine endurance beyond measure. Its anomalies, though frustrating, were gifts. They reminded us that the universe is not a finished book, but an unfinished poem. Its verses scattered in riddles we are still learning to read. Scientists speak in terms of data, but many admit quietly that what sustains them is not certainty, but awe. To glimpse an interstellar visitor is to glimpse the unimaginable, a shard of another sun's story, a relic of a vanished world, a messenger that has crossed gulfs of time and space. In its passage, 3I Atlas carried no broadcast, no words, no tale, and yet its silence was eloquent. It whispered that the universe is larger than we can fathom, stranger than we can model, richer than we can exhaust. The public, too, felt the wonder. Headlines spoke of alien probes, of cosmic riddles, of mysteries unsolved. But behind the noise was something simpler, the joy of being alive in a time when such things can be seen. For most of human history, the stars were unreachable, eternal, beyond touch. Now fragments of those stars enter our skies, and we have built instruments capable of catching them in their fleeting passage. To live in such a moment is to live in a rare age of awakening. The persistence of wonder is what balances fear. Fear tells us how small we are. Wonder reminds us that smallness can still contain meaning. Fear shows us the abyss. Wonder shows us the beauty of gazing into it. In the story of 3I Atlas, fear and wonder were never separate. They wove together like shadow and light. As the object dimmed, slipping back into the darkness from which it came, scientists knew its riddle would likely remain unsolved. But perhaps that was never failure. Perhaps the gift was not in explanation, but in experience, the privilege of an encounter with the unknown, an intimacy with the cosmos rare and fleeting. The visitor may have gone, yet the wonder it ignited lingered, glowing in the human heart. And then, Almost as quietly as it had arrived, 3I Atlas began to fade. Its path carried it outward, away from Earth, away from the sun, into the cold silence of interstellar night. Telescopes strained to track its dimming glimmer, but night by night it slipped further into obscurity until it was indistinguishable from the background stars. It left no final revelation, no flare of a comet's tail, no spectral fingerprint etched in certainty. It simply departed, indifferent to the questions it left behind. In that way, it echoed, Oumuamua, another ghost, another fleeting whisper through the solar system, gone before understanding could arrive. Its departure carried an ache, for science thrives on repetition, on the luxury of observing again and again until patterns emerge. But an interstellar visitor offers no second chance. It passes once, and whatever is missed is lost forever. 3I Atlas departed with its secrets intact, carrying them outward into a darkness our instruments cannot follow. Yet its vanishing was profound. The silence it left was not emptiness, but echo. Every unanswered question became a seed for future inquiry. The absence of closure became its own kind of message, that the universe does not exist to satisfy our curiosity, but to remind us of scale, of patience, of limits. Even in an age of satellites and space telescopes, the cosmos retains the power to withhold. Science is a dialogue with a partner who often refuses to reply. Sometimes the most important truth is not what is revealed, but what is left unresolved. The astronomers who had studied it knew they would never see it again. It would drift for millions of years, perhaps brushing past other suns, perhaps wandering forever. Its story with humanity was brief, but its silence will endure. For in that silence lies a reminder: the cosmos is vast, patient, inexhaustible, and every mystery is also an invitation to keep looking upward. When at last it was gone, the night sky seemed subtly altered, not in its stars, which burned as always, but in the minds that had watched. A fragment no larger than a mountain had unsettled entire frameworks of thought. Its shadow was not across space, but across us. In classrooms and conference halls, its ghost lingered. Equations were revised, models redrawn, papers debated as though one more calculation might unlock what had been lost. But in quiet moments, away from mathematics, reflection deepened. What does it mean for something to glide from the dark, cross our system, and leave more questions than answers? What does it mean to be so small, so brief, in a universe so strange? Here philosophers took up the thread, reminding us that the cosmos is not only a subject of study but a mirror of existence. If fragments like 3I Atlas can cross interstellar gulfs, then so too must humility cross the boundaries of human ambition. Its mystery was not only scientific but existential. It reminded us that reality does not revolve around us, that meaning is not guaranteed, that knowledge is always provisional. And yet, in this humility, there was gift. 3I Atlas revealed the fragility of our understanding, yes, but also the resilience of our wonder. Fear and awe, intertwined, pointed to the same truth, that we are awake in a universe that will never cease to surprise us. To witness an interstellar traveler is to remember that we live not in isolation but in connection, that the stars are not abstractions, but neighbors, whose stories sometimes drift into our own. Its shadow was not despair, but depth. It showed that science is not about closing mysteries, but about living with them, walking their edges, allowing them to enlarge our sense of being. The object has gone, its light lost in the abyss, but its questions remain alive. They are the true inheritance of its visit. Perhaps this is the role of such wanderers, not to answer, but to ask. To remind us that the cosmos is vast beyond reckoning, and that within its vastness we are both insignificant and extraordinary. Tiny creatures who can notice, who can fear, who can wonder, who can dream. 3I Atlas has left, but its echo lingers, a quiet resonance that follows us as long as we keep looking skyward. And now, as the visitor fades beyond sight, thought slows with it. The questions remain, but their sharp edges soften. Imagine the fragment dissolving into the velvet dark, becoming one with the countless unseen wanderers. Its silence is no longer unsettling, but gentle, like a door closing softly at the end of a long night. In that quiet, fear dissolves into calm. The universe has always been larger than our comprehension, always written in riddles. To dwell endlessly on them exhausts the spirit. To acknowledge them, to let them be, is to find peace in mystery. 3I Atlas has come and gone, and still the stars shine, still the earth turns, still life endures in its fragile rhythm. Perhaps that is its final lesson, that we are not meant to master the cosmos, but to share in its wonder. To look up and see, not answers, but invitations. Each anomaly, each silence, part of a dialogue stretching across time, where our role is not only to measure, but also to marvel. So let the shadow of 3I Atlas fade into the vastness, leaving behind the quiet gift of perspective. Let its mystery remind us that the unknown is not an enemy, but a companion, guiding us toward deeper humility. And as the night settles, let humility become comfort, for the universe need not reveal all its secrets at once. It only needs, now and then, to remind us that we are part of its story, and that story is still unfolding.